Good afternoon, good morning, depending on when you are. Here we are for the second episode of our mini-series under EECOLE, the CD initiative to understand and support entrepreneurship education and the role in innovation ecosystems, and also what it means to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. We are very lucky today to continue our conversation after the deep dive into the New York ecosystem last week with two experts that knows a lot about what it means to educate people to become more entrepreneurial, the kind of entrepreneurial skills and competencies that we need to face different challenges today, and also that we need to support the development of entrepreneurship ecosystems in different locations around the world, Gabi Kafka and Norris Kruger. And now we'll immediately leave the floor to Maria to start the conversation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Maria Sobron. I work for the OECD for the EECOLE network. Just to remind you, we will have two guests today, Gabi Kafka and Norris Kruger. And the topic of this session is assessing the impact of the entrepreneurship education in individuals' mindset. We will have a discussion, a Q&A first with the experts, an exchange of 30 minutes, and then we will move to the Q&A session where you participants can ask us. So don't hesitate to send us your questions at the end of the 30 minutes to engage with the experts. Rafael Trapasso will be moderating this Q&A session. But for now, back to the experts. We have with us Dr. Gabi Kafka, who is currently doing her postdoctoral research at the Knowledge Alliance, which is a consortium of universities in the Netherlands. She is focusing her postdoctoral research on adaptive expertise, lifelong learning. She has conducted, her research focuses more broadly on the development of entrepreneurs, entrepreneurship education. She has also worked with the European Union, with the European Commission, developing the EU project EPIC, Evaluation of Entrepreneurship Education Programs in Higher Education. And we also have with us as a special guest, Dr. Norris Kruger, who is an entrepreneurship scholar and who is a visiting professor of the Kyushu University in Japan. So these two experts will debate and tell us more about their expertise and the multidisciplinary research on entrepreneurship education and the entrepreneurial mindset. So first, Gabi, can you tell us a little bit more about your career and about your research on the entrepreneurial mindset? You will have 4 to 5 minutes before we pass the floor to Norris. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me well? So yeah, seeing nodding pictures with symbols, very nice. Well, it's great to be here. Thank you so much. As I was introduced a little bit, I'm going to jump right into my educational background, which is I have a bachelor and a master in sociology and a PhD in entrepreneurship studies, and currently pursue my postdoctoral research in the field of educational sciences, and more specifically in expertise development. So my research is really interdisciplinary and also multidisciplinary, because I do look at the development of adaptive expertise among professionals in various domains and sectors. And especially I look at the part that they share with entrepreneurs, namely their metacognition. And metacognition relates to our knowledge and interpretative structures that we use when we plan for the future, and especially when we deal with conditions of uncertainty. And as we know from entrepreneurship, that's really something that entrepreneurs have to deal with. So my studies apply to the development of professionals generally, but also to the development of an entrepreneurial mindset. Specifically, what I look at is sense making. That is considered the root of all cognition, and it relates to, well, the basic interpretative elements, phases of our information processing as the brain, and it relates to mental structures that are involved when we perceive relevant cues and when we label them and categorize them. So that's really the interpretative nature of sense making. And it's a really important process because it helps us create order in the chaotic flux of reality. And sense making is a mental process, so it can't be observed, but we can assess it by means of sense giving activities that people use, like they give presentations to other professionals. So together we make sense about what we're doing. We transfer knowledge and we acquire knowledge, the two basic categories of how we do learning. And in this, particularly important, it's not only sense giving, but also sense breaking. That is when we basically interrupt existing sense making and force others to consider other information, change their perspective, for example. And that specifically is called reframing. And reframing is really important in gaining new information and creating new insights, and specifically in creative problem solving. And so it's really important for entrepreneurs and for professionals alike. In addition to sense breaking, there's also sense demanding. And that's the last word I'm going to bother you with. And sense demanding is only about asking questions. Because it turns out we don't do that much. Now, do we? And if we do it in a closed way. Now, don't we? And the more we ask questions, open questions, the more information we get in, the more opportunities we have for reframing, which brings us into a sense cycle. And that term was graciously developed together with Norris Kruger and Carl Weick. And the sense cycle can be observed, it can be assessed, and it helps us to see what students learn in entrepreneurship educations and how professionals develop their entrepreneurial thinking skills. That's what I do. I hope I was within time.
Perfect, Gabi, thank you. Now over to Norris, if you could introduce yourself a little bit more and tell us about your research on the entrepreneurial mindset. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Norris Kruger, I'm broadcasting from Boise, Idaho. I wear many hats, but today is my OECD hat, and it's been a great joy to be able to work with all these good people. I'm an educator, a scholar, an ecosystem builder, and a recovering entrepreneur. That I've gotten to see a lot of things, and I've been blessed with having these multiple perspectives, which have driven me, I think, in very good directions, and sometimes aggravations that it's getting better, but the most common definition of the entrepreneurial mindset, both in practice and in research, has been they don't define it. I know it when I see it, and that's been both aggravating, but also liberating, because that means this is an important research topic. That trying to understand all of that, and I think that I come at it from an expert cognition perspective. How does an expert entrepreneur, how do they think that it is differently? And it's multifaceted. That it is there are a lot of entrepreneurial mindset for what situation, what kind of entrepreneur. And the one thing that will be different for the audience here is last week we're talking about the outcome of these educational processes. We're developing, people into actually launching ventures. This is a broader perspective, entrepreneurship as mindset as a life skill, that we are looking for developing enterprising individuals who will use their entrepreneurial skills, mindset, and behaviors in other domains. It is mindset seems to be very important. Most educators say, yes, we are developing the entrepreneurial mindset. No, we're not measuring it. And this is something where the tide is turning, and we've got some great insights onto that later. In the second part of this, Gabi will be talking about the EPIC tool. There are other tools that are there. But this the sense cycle is an example of a process that is not necessarily entrepreneurial, but it is essential for successful entrepreneurial thinking, but it may not be sufficient, but it is important, and it's going to stay tuned. It's going to get a lot more important as this research moves forward. Anyway, and I'm happy to be here, and my thanks to Stefan, Nigel, Barbara, and Catherine There are 4 people on this call I know who are part of this grand adventure to move things forward. And back to you.
Thank you very much to both of you for bringing us to the foundations of how we could define entrepreneurial mindsets and thinking. Nori has already highlighted the fact that you have developed some tools. Now we would like to continue the conversation and discuss a little bit more in detail about the tools that you have generated, in particular EPIC, the Entrepreneurial Potential and Innovation Competence. So tell us more about this. What is that and how it can be used? Over to you.
Thank you so much. So yes, the EPIC tool was designed together with a consortium of 5 parties that sat in the core group. And it was a project that came from the European Commission. And they asked us, okay, we need an assessment toolkit for entrepreneurship education. We've got to know how to assess, the outcomes of entrepreneurship education. And so together with Kåre Moberg from the Danish Foundation of Entrepreneurship, Klaus Seiler from Strategic Center for Entrepreneurship in Munich, Slavica Singer, who was in the call last week, I'm not sure if she's here today, from Osijek in Croatia, and Julia Vorka from Technopolis in England. And I, at the time, I was working as a consultant for Ecoris, a private firm that does a lot of public consultancy in the domain of labor market and education. We won the bid for this project, and basically they told us, okay, get knowledge together about what we know about assessment of mindset and skills. So it was rather broad, and give us the best and create a tool. So we immediately called in Norris, because that's the best thing you can always do. And together with an advisory board of 10 expert entrepreneurship educators, most of them from Europe, some of them from around the world, including Norris, but also Diana Welch, for example, from the US, Andy Pinaluna. They helped us think about, okay, what should we put in that assessment toolkit? We also surveyed all of Europe. We collected data from students and from educators on what they wanted in such a toolkit, what they wanted to be assessed. And so it was a long and tedious process. And eventually we realized we cannot just take what's there and pick the best. We need to combine it all. Because if we want to do justice to entrepreneurship education and entrepreneurial development and what that means, we have to take it broad, a very broad scope of how we define entrepreneurship. So we took this, so we made a tool with 5 assessment areas. In the first assessment area, we put scales for the EntreComp framework. EntreComp framework is the framework of entrepreneurial competencies that the European Commission has defined. It's an extremely useful framework as it defines 15 dimensions, 15 competences that are very relevant for entrepreneurship. And they are. But those 15 dimensions are conceptual. They cannot be assessed in empirical analysis because they overlap. So you never know which one you got. The 3 areas in which the 15 dimensions fall are ideas and opportunities. So that's about ideation and vision, and also sustainable and ethical thinking, about interaction, which is about financial and economic literacy and interpersonal skills, but also resources, mobilizing resources and motivation. So this goes further than skills, but it's not only competence, it's attitudes too. And we realized, okay, if we have them in, then we better do this good. So we included the second assessment area with only focusing on entrepreneurial intentions and attitudes. And in these, we included the existing strong indicators that we know, self-efficacy, outcome expectations. And the third dimension was mindset and enterprising behavior. So this is about collaborative behavior and judgment, entrepreneurial judgment. In the fourth assessment area, we did something different. It wasn't a quantitative assessment area, but it's qualitative. And everybody should check it out because it's very unique and it's a free assessment tool available for everyone on the website of HE Innovate. And in that fourth assessment area, we have cases, vignettes that people then, students can then say, okay, how would I react in that situation? What strategy would I pick? and then they have a choice of 5 strategies that they drag and drop in order of preference. So we can see their preference for effectuation in this case. The 5th assessment dimension is not for students, but for the teachers. It's about how the students perceived the teaching, because this is an important element that we need to talk about. What does it mean when we assess? Are we assessing only the students or also what we are doing? And we know that experiential learning is important. And so that assessment area is about if that is being used and how the students feel about that. And then teachers or even students can mix and match from those 5 assessment areas. It's enormous amount of indicators you can choose from. So it's a great assessment tool and it's freely available. And I hope people will use it. I'm not sure if I'm going over the time, so I'm going to stop here for a moment.
No worries. Do you want to add
Well,
anything?
I know I don't think you were over time. Obviously, I'm pretty excited about the EPIC tool. There are other tools that are out there. Entrecom is starting to gain some popularity, but we are really eager to push this forward. heinnovate.eu, go to the website. If you're not registered, they'll make you register, but it's free. And you can find the tool. But Gabi hit on something very important, that it's multifaceted, because different entrepreneurial skills, attitudes, and behaviors are necessary in different situations, say corporate entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship. The test can be customizable to all these dimensions. And that's a pretty exciting part, because the important thing is that if you step back and think about education in general, think of it like when you're writing a lesson plan, where are the students on something and where do you expect them to end up? What is it that we're changing? Now, at least in my country, there's a lot of resistance to that. That maybe they don't want to find out, but it's a little scary to say, well, I'm changing this skill, I'm not changing that skill, and we're testing for that. And that can be pretty tricky in a lot of ways, because we don't know yet necessarily. Here's a great exercise. I think it changes this dimension of entrepreneurial skills, this facet of entrepreneurship. Okay, this project that we're doing in class, it's supposed to increase their action orientation and their cognitive flexibility, but does it? And there are deeper questions involved, but it's quite satisfying. Having done pilot studies on these facets of the mindset, even something like a startup weekend makes at least a small dent. We are making a difference, and to me, that's the really, I think, the really exciting part of that. I hope you'll take a look. We will send out a set of links, including a sample assessment that Gabi had developed, and I will leave that to Raffaele to pass that along. I'll also attach it to the LinkedIn announcement for this. But we now have a chance to say, okay, this is what we're changing in this entrepreneurship exercise, this class, this course, and find out whether we really are moving the needle. And that's very exciting.
Thank you.
And thanks, Gabi, for dragging me into this.
That's my pleasure.
Thank you both. Very, very interesting to hear more about this tool. I think a colleague of ours put the link on the chat, so I'll go check it. Last question to conclude. Really, if you could tell us from your extensive experience, what are the 3 most relevant things you learned about the entrepreneurial mindset? Thank you.
Let me try to wrap this up immediately by bringing it back to last week when Cornell or a representative of Cornell told us about what they do in terms of getting those entrepreneurial individuals together in teams and then have them work together. And they create a lot of engagement and feedback opportunities with others. And I think that's really the strength of the entrepreneurial mindset, that it's open and curious and less fearful of what it might hear, because it realizes, as I heard once Norris say, who has it from some mythical person in the Baltic countries, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. So this is about really the mindset of not being afraid of failure, because being afraid of failure means being afraid of learning. And I like to say, and these words come from me, real learning hurts, because it does mean that we have failed, but then next time we know. But coming back to a more positive approach, it is also about moving away from summative assessment, how it's called, which is really the what we do, and we have to, because we are an organization that looks at socioeconomic variables of income, gender, popularity. It's all quantitative. So we have tests and we give grades. But we know that formative assessment is so much more important, that we help students learn, that we engage with them, give feedback. And that feedback can help them also process and reflect better. There is research on this. So we should, if we want to invest in that most valuable resource we have, the mind of young entrepreneurial individuals, that's the education we should give them. Yeah, ask questions. That's the last thing I've learned from entrepreneurs or from people who are really entrepreneurial. That cognition is really all about asking questions and probing and wanting to know more. So that's very exciting. It might be difficult for some entrepreneurs to then really manage a venture once it's fully fledged, growing and everything. But it's so much needed for starting the venture and getting people engaged. So let's teach our students to ask questions, and let's see if we can find a way to assess that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabi. Very interesting. And it really speaks to the transversality of the entrepreneurial mindset and how it can be applied for more than just entrepreneurs. Norris, do you want to give us your pre-takeaways, pre-learnings?
Well, these are sort of bigger picture. Ultimately, we owe entrepreneurial learnings the best pedagogies, the best instructors, the best ecosystem to support that, and the best assessment. Our research into impact, it has lagged behind. That I was part of a structured literature review that found out of 100 plus studies that we looked at, maybe 4 of them were actually generalizable, that they were using bad theory, bad research design, and it all got by reviewers because the reviewers and editors aren't necessarily. That is changing. I'm happy to say we do owe them the best. And the second is that assessment matters. If you're an educator, Gabi mentioned the term formative assessment. Happy to send you more on that. And the ability of these tools for the students and the educators to co-create what they're doing. This is a tool that I wouldn't be too uncomfortable giving to even primary school students. I mean, that's yes, it was a long, messy process, but as with Entrecom, it came out with something I think very useful. My third takeaway is the conversations that we both had and others. There's some amazing people out there on this journey already. We blather a lot about our friend Andy Penaluna and Carl Jones in Australia. There's some people doing tremendous stuff, but on this call, Stefan, wave at the crowd. Nigel, if you saw what Nigel is doing in Buckinghamshire, is amazing. Barbara Gabriel in Portugal, and Catherine Brentnell, who did a brilliant dissertation in the UK. And there are others, but they're on the call, so I get to praise them. A lot of good people. I look forward to this moving forward. Yes, it's a very messy thing. We know the entrepreneurial mindset, even entrepreneurial skills, are conceptually and empirically, we're still working on it, but we've got enough that we can move forward, and we welcome you all to the journey. Please join us and let's have some fun changing the world and giving more work to Gabi. Oh, and Raffaele, of course. Everybody gives work to Raffaele. No money, just work. Yeah, but I think we all can identify there. And thank you to OECD for having us.
Great, thank you, Norris. on that good note, I think I'll pass the floor to my colleague Rafael Trapasso for the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a very interesting conversation. And the first question or the first comment I received in the chat is about the risk and this culture of failure, which, as a learning tool. And someone was flagging, actually, Victor Bruno from Brazil was flagging that not only in his country, but in many countries, failing is a problem, and people have want to have the less exposure possible towards failure. It's a bit the new management culture, no? That we know. What do you think about that? How bureaucracy and fear of failure can kill the entrepreneurial mindset?
Well, one other thing, it doesn't mean fear of failure doesn't mean you don't move forward. Courage is not the absence of fear. The absence of fear, a technical term in cognitive psychology, is stupidity. That moving forward, despite the risks, despite the hazards that you see, that yes, there are things out there. We also know there are things we can't see yet. There's not just risk, but uncertainty and ambiguity. And having people, the kind of experiential learning that we can do in the classroom to get them used to it. That yes, no matter what you do, Godzilla may come and stomp on you. On the other hand, despite the seemingly long odds, we can be very successful. Role modeling is good, but personal experience. Okay, I failed, I didn't die. Yes, it hurt, but I learned. Gabi?
Yeah, what he said. Yeah, I think there is, so it's interesting that you mentioned the word bureaucracy, because I think what we see is indeed, there's a book, The Risk Society, which is already 20 years old. And it talks about, how we try to identify risk and structure them, and we try to manage and control them. And every dead person is a loss that we want to avoid. It's what we are as humans, because we are social. And it's what we have now transferred to our children. So they don't want to fail because, because our parents tried to, keep us safe, and we want to be safe. So what is important is that we learn that there are others. So if we are afraid of something, it's good to know that there are others who are also afraid, who also don't dare. So it's important to ask questions. So force your students to ask questions to each other, and they will see that it will get easier. Practice makes it easier. And it also brings them together. And that's why interdisciplinary education is so important, because we have come with bureaucracy as well. And with the world we're living in, with the high specialization of labor, so the division of labor in that complex society that we have, so intense that people hardly ever talk to people anymore from totally other backgrounds. And this has to do with education, with gender as well, and age and everything, but with education at this point the most, because I think sometimes that has a lot to do with bureaucracy as well, because we are working on complex problems, for example, the OECD internally. So there's a lot of different perspectives at the table. And then it does get complicated. Communication is the most complicated thing of everything. It's the most important and the most complicated. Forget about love. It's all about communication in the 21st century. So in order, risk is what Norris says. Don't let it paralyze you. Work with it. Be scared. Talk about it.
And there's nothing wrong with being scared. This is, Gabi, you mentioned sense giving, that things like the lean startup model is an example of, you're saying you are proposing hypotheses and you're testing them, and if you're a scientist, you expect them, you want these experiments to fail, because that's how you learn. And getting people who are good at that in science, suddenly getting them to do that in the business world, it can, as Steve Blank talks about it, sometimes pretty hard. But there's also interesting research that fear of failure among social entrepreneurs is a lot lower. I'm failing because I sold blue widgets and somebody's doing it better than me, I'm going to be upset. But if I'm trying to reduce hunger and someone's doing it better than me, I'd be a little annoyed, but I'll ultimately be happy. And the other is, don't do things unintentionally. Catherine Brentmel studying the role of competition, and you can have competition that can light the fire and generalizable knowledge, or does it only affect the people who are going through it? Or can there be negative consequences? So
I have 3 more questions.
Excited, please.
Yes, because one is very interesting, is about the relationship between artificial intelligence and robotics and the human-centric approach in the entrepreneurial mindset. I think that is a very interesting, actually, the dichotomy, if you want, which or just a parallel. What do you think about that?
Well, Gabi, go ahead.
No, you go first. It's always interesting.
Okay, I asked ChatGPT do you have the entrepreneurial mindset? And let's say I didn't get a very satisfying answer. I think I can actually confuse it. There are all these tools out there. Again, as you just said, it can frighten you. You're scared what's out. This is working against me, but it also the great opportunities to work with you. With a lot of this artificial intelligence, let's say machine learning or deep learning, so we get away from AI as a buzzword. The more we have tools that we can learn more and more about our customers, about our stakeholders, that again, entrepreneurs are not risk takers, they're risk mitigators. They embrace uncertainty, and the tools, if we are proactive and use those tools, I think that I'm not a techno optimist like Mark Andreessen. I think if you haven't read that, it's a little overboard, but I'm sure as hell not a pessimist. I look forward to figuring out how to use, someday I'll even figure out how to use the AI companion here in Zoom.
I think that, well, we heard just in Japan now, Norris, you got me thinking of a study that was undertaken by the people that we visited, and they told us about it. They're using ChatGPT to actually formulate questions to the students that then the students have find the answers to. And so you have a very intelligent assistant teacher in the classroom who can really take care of groups. The next step, I think, would be to use artificial intelligence to look at, or well, monitor is a really negative word. I'm German, I'm not really afraid of so of authority, but so we can monitor and evaluate students' discussions with the help of AI and see if they are asking questions to each other. Because very quickly any conversations go into statements and not into questions. And so we can use those tools. Yeah, they don't have biochemical processes anyway, so I don't see how.
Well, we can't really put an MRI helmet on an AI machine, but the nice thing is that when you have large groups of people that you're working with, let's say large classes, large training audiences, that there is software out there already that will essentially take in all of that, all of their comments, all of their questions, and narrow it down. Here are the crucial points that we can, not completely in consensus, but this is sort of a real slice. This is at the heart of what the class as a whole, or the audience as a whole, to do. Crowdsmart.io is one of those.
I thought it was word cloud. Never mind.
Anyway, no, but let's move to the next question, because it's interesting. First of all, sorry for using the word bureaucracy as a negative. And it can be, there is also Weberian bureaucracy that is actually but there is another question here from Mexico. They said, we applied EPIC to a group of students in Mexico at the beginning of a entrepreneurship course. And what was surprising to us is that they feel competent in almost everything. What do you think of it? So do you think that there is a possibility for EPIC to be, overreact to entrepreneurial signals?
Well, it's we won't know until you have the post. You know, if they do a post test, then we can see what happened. But early on, people were interested in entrepreneurial self-efficacy, and they said, okay, at the beginning of the class, take the test, and halfway through, it said, let's take the test again. And on average, the class entrepreneurial self-efficacy went down because they got the reality check. And by the end of the term, it was back up. And now I remember the instructor, the guy presenting, saying, I'm really glad I didn't tell my dean about my lowering students' self-efficacy in the short run. But part of it is that a lot of students have tremendous misconceptions about that, and adults that the reality check is, it might not be a bad thing. If you're teaching a class and you lower the entrepreneurial intentions for people who aren't ready, that's not a bad thing. Especially if they'll never be ready. So, but it's a great kind of thing to talk about with students.
Yeah.
That why do you think this way?
Yeah. That's the conversation we need to have, I think. Talk with students about what do they want to have developed? What is it they want to develop actually? What is their goals?
Yeah, I always in classes, I always ask students, which skill do you want to get better at? What facet of the mindset would you like to get better at? And so it's either none of them or all of them. But having the conversation about why that particular skill, why that particular attitude, why that particular behavior is that they see as lacking. And
thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, Norris. Because there is another question that is interesting, also for improving entrepreneurship education, because it is about the precondition, the personal characteristics, such prior work experience, gender, even level. We could discuss income level, other general characteristics of individuals or place of residence, or the community in which they are, that according to you affect their entrepreneurial mindset. And if you think that this should in some way modify entrepreneurial education.
Well, you're right about the culture, that there's so much tacit knowledge. I live in a city where we've got a lot of great startups, but none of them have been through a venture before, or their friends or family have not. So there's all these little things, and so they read Inc. magazine and think that's how things are. But having that cultural embeddedness is. I remember my first visit to Silicon Valley. I'm at a venture capital firm for an interview, and I find out the receptionist, the woman at the front desk, already had a business plan. And she said, yeah, the janitor has a business plan that it's in the air that they breathe. It's a very normal thing. Whereas, in Boise, Idaho at the time, there was really none of that. Gabi, you're looking very thoughtful.
Yeah, I was thinking that, but we can change it. So in Japan also they did research, and I heard that, so they were looking at, well, they had a really cool research, doesn't really matter what kind of experiment, but it was really well thought through. And of course we can always say all kinds of things about the research design, but basically in a short note, that what they found was that if you have a group in which you have a significant amount of people who are passionate about it, then the group can really tip that direction. And for my own research, I now make groups of students, if they learn, not larger than 4. And I know this is terrible, rather 3 actually. And I know it gives us more work, but they do learn better, because if you have bigger groups, people zone out and feel less responsible for the assignment. And then the whole group tip thing can't happen. So in order for the passionate ones to do their job in human interaction, we got to give them a limited stage to do their magic in every group. So that's in a very simple nutshell. But I think so we can get people, that have the conditions where it's not easy. If your parents are entrepreneurs, it's going to be so much easier for you. We can learn it. Yeah, we can learn it.
That you reminded me of that. If you're looking at intentions toward a behavior, whatever that is, there's not just a personal component. There's also a social component. That your perception of local social norms, social support, help drive the desirability of that action. Even if it's an illusion, you think everybody is doing that. At the same time, in terms of the feasibility, that it's not just self-efficacy, it's collective efficacy. I can do this. We can do this. That whether it's my work group or my ecosystem, that Boise has its problems, but if I were to start a venture, I think we could do it. I mean, the community would be seen as supportive. Now, again, that could be an illusion, but we give them opportunities in the classroom to get the signals, who's out there who can help you, and who out there is that contagious passion that we see in so many areas of life is just as true in entrepreneurial. I do a startup weekend. I want us to go start a business, and it's driving.
Thank you, Norris, because also this is Barbara Gabriel that stresses the importance of having an interdisciplinary and safe space in which you can develop this entrepreneurial mindset. And I think that this is really a challenge because our academic system is organized in a very specialized way. So there is an idiosyncrasy here that we have to face. And I think that the work that you are doing in generating visibility about the advantage of and the creation of the entrepreneurial mindset will be pivotal to open this transdisciplinary space. I think that my work as moderator is about to end here. I give back the floor to Julia or Maria, and I leave them conclude the meeting. Thank you very much for this insightful discussion.
Thanks, Raffaele, but please go ahead, Norris.
No, I would just say thank you, and join us in the adventure.
Well, it's our time now to thank you. Thank you, Gabi, and thank you, Norris, for spending some time with us. My organization area is based in Asia, so we're very interested to learn what you shared about Japan. We do a lot of work with Japan, so maybe at some point we need to continue our conversation. But having said that, once again, a big thanks to the speakers and to all of you to remain with us until the last minute, very active with lots of questions. Please do tune in once again in 1 week time, because we will continue the conversation with other amazing speakers. Maria, anything else you want to add?
Oh, no, thank you again to our fabulous speakers, and thank you for participating all. We will put, as Raffaele mentioned, this video, the recording on YouTube, so in case you missed anything, and we hope to see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. With Franca Cantoni, we will go deeper in this discussion on the mindset.